Hi, welcome to What the Flick. I'm Matt Atchity, William Bibbiani, Alonso Duralde. We are doing the super spoiler-filled review of Interstellar. You may have watched our original review where we didn't spoil it too much, but this one, if you have not watched Interstellar or you plan to and you don't want massive plot spoilers,
Stop now.
Stop.
There was a cool piece in the New York Times Magazine about how nobody dies in movies anymore. About, or at least in superhero movies and sci-fi movies, that somehow, like because you have to sell them all over the world and you have to have sequels and stuff, that people don't die. And it's been bugging the shit out of me, and I'm glad somebody finally called it out, because you get these movies that flirt with the idea that somebody's going to die, that somebody's going to make a noble sacrifice, and then they reverse it at the end. Like Oblivion, that drove me nuts, where like Tom Cruise flies into the evil alien and blows it up. Oh, but it turns out we've got 8 spare Tom Cruise clones, so it's fine.
It feels like a lot of the time, not so much in Interstellar, which they set it up, I think they did it badly, and we'll talk about that in a second, but when the hero doesn't sacrifice themselves or it turns out they were fine, it feels like they test screened it and the audience was just like, bring Tom Cruise back!
Yeah.
And then they do. Here I don't think it's that frustrating, although, okay, so what happens is Matthew McConaughey has to go, it turns out the only way to solve the problem is to go into a wormhole, which sounds like a Transformers plot point, doesn't it? It's just like, how do we stop today? We're gonna fly into a wormhole, but that'll kill us, but reasons. Okay, fine.
Not the wormhole.
No,
Not the wormhole, black hole. Oh, too many holes.
I kind of wanted him to pass Hans Zarkov on the way in there.
But he has to go into a black hole.
See Maximilian floating around.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
He has to go into a black hole, and then he winds up in his daughter's bedroom, which, oh Christ, how contacty is that?
Yeah.
And then he turns out he was her ghost the whole time, which I actually, like, the second they said, they're just like, oh, she's got a ghost in her room, I'm like, oh, it's gonna be Matthew McConaughey at the end, because I've read Animal Man.
Okay.
I realize that's obscure, but it really
I didn't
is
see it coming,
Animal
but
Man.
I did have
It's
to
weird.
ask you afterwards, what's that thing where the time traveler couldn't have possibly made the other thing happen if he hadn't gone in the first place? An ontological paradox. Yes,
AKA a bootstrap paradox, which is, just like how did Chuck Berry invent rock and roll if he learned it from Marty McFly, and in that case, how did Marty McFly learn rock and roll?
And you can do that in a comedic time travel movie, sure, fine.
You can also do a movie that's about that paradox, like Primer or Time Crimes, where that's really the whole point, is how little sense it makes. But here, they're trying to take it seriously.
Primer's really about that, though.
I think it's about how confusing it is.
This felt like a cop-out. When they get to that point, I'm like, really? It's that? And so on top of that, to then have that be, oh God, he's gonna survive all this, and he's gonna, like, the whole movie's like, you have to choose between the fate of the human race and seeing your daughter alive. No, you don't!
No, some of the stuff that's really obnoxious about this movie, as I mentioned in the other review, I like that it captures kind of the emotional devastation of watching your kids grow up over the course of like 5 or 6 minutes.
Yes.
Like watching, to have your son write you off. Right, and say, my wife says that you're not even there anymore.
I've been waiting 20 years.
Waiting for this.
In the 2 hours that you were away.
That's brutal. But then the movie, first of all, that paradox is such like stoner level sci-fi. It's so obnoxious.
Wouldn't it be awesome?
Oh man, imagine like you got directions to build a time machine out of this old book, and you go back in time to meet the guy, and you can't find him, and you write your directions down and leave it in a book, and that's oh God, please. And what's frustrating is this is Nolan. He should be smarter than this.
He is smarter than this.
The other thing that really bothers me about this movie is the whole thing. They are trying to colonize other worlds because the Earth is running out of resources. Right. Like there's this huge blight. And then they don't address that at all. Like he gets to the end of the movie, he ends up in that space station, but there's nothing about, well, we got all this dirt from, like they make this big deal about like these blight and these crops and they're all gonna die out. Well, if that space station is all the stuff from the original Earth, their days are numbered on that space station.
All they have is corn.
Like all they got is corn, and that shit's gonna run out, just like it was going to on the planet. They don't make any reference. They cut to Anne Hathaway, who's on that planet all by herself. You don't see anyone else, so you kind of have this thought like, what the hell have they been doing while McConaughey's been under?
Christy is unfortunately sick today and couldn't come in. She had an interesting theory, which I wish worked, because if it did, it would validate this movie, which is McConaughey dies, and the whole end of the movie is his, like, dream fantasy thing, which I wish that would
movie
work, but it
falls
doesn't.
apart if that's the case.
Just
but it
like
wouldn't.
the end of Black Hole.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even that doesn't work. It's like, oh god, it's like so yeah. Logically, this shit doesn't make sense. The whole the son character. What is all that stuff at the end where he won't
turns
move
into some weird, creepy redneck trying to protect his kids
and he won't
from
move the kids out of the
Yeah.
dust area, even though they've all got asthma, and then she's got to set the fields on fire. Like, what's even happening anymore?
Okay, I talked about, because it's in the first act and it's alluded to in the trailer, I talked about in the previous one about my issue with motivation. Matthew McConaughey refuses to tell his daughter the real reason why he's going.
But then he sends her off to NASA so she can learn it all.
So she can learn,
anyway.
and he knows that. Michael Caine promises to teach her it, so it makes no sense whatsoever. So their entire emotional divide is gone. But then there's another thing that happens later where you find out that Michael Caine knew that there was absolutely no way they were going to get everyone else on the planet out into space. He knew that, and it was just trying to keep him motivated, trying to give him a glimmer of hope. So then why did he teach Jessica Chastain everything she needed to know to save the human race if he had written it off when she was a child? There was absolutely no reason to do that if he had completely committed to it, which he says he did. There's no reason for it. There's no emotional or intellectual reason for her entire journey.
Ultimately, I think what is disappointing about this film, beyond just because people say, oh, you didn't understand the plot, or it doesn't matter, or whatever.
I understood it. It just doesn't work.
Right, but the big issue here, this is a movie that deals with these giant concepts about, time and space and mankind and our future and what are we willing to sacrifice and how are we willing to survive. And then it just turns into this, it all boils down to this really sort of treacly, love is the force of the universe. And,
Which I don't buy from Nolan.
The movie doesn't earn that.
Exactly.
That's the thing. Like, you can make that. You can do that story, but the movie doesn't earn it.
No, and there was, I forget who said it, there was a review that said, this is the movie for people who want to know what the thread count was of the sheets in the hotel room at the end of 2001. Like, how do you take this cosmic thing and just turn it into the most sort of thuddingly, prosaic, obvious, homily, instead of letting it be enigmatic or letting somebody fucking die for a greater cause. God forbid you do either of those things in a Hollywood movie in 2014.
Let's talk about lousy homily. Okay, so one of the big things in here, which wasn't advertised, but it's on IMDb, you can look it up, is Matt Damon shows up as one of the scientists they were looking for who had landed on one of the planets who was conducting information.
Supposed to be this great hero.
He's supposed to be this great hero, everyone looks up to him, but then it turns out he's crazy. Okay, fine, but his whole thing is sort of representing in the story sort of the folly of man and how self-serving we can be and how we can look out for ourselves and not for the greater good, and they named him Man. That tells you everything you need to know about how pushy this movie is emotionally. It doesn't it'll let the science and let the plot get parceled off as it needs to be, but emotionally it'll just punch you whenever it needs to, even down to like just the stupid things. Okay, so the Morse code that was set up earlier, and then he ends up revealing the entire mysteries of the black hole to his daughter via Morse code on a wristwatch. And then when she's done transcribing it, which I imagine would take a few years, she has it on 4 sheets of paper.
That she then throws in the air.
Yeah, oh wait, I needed those.
I get frustrated by this movie because it's one of those films that fools you into thinking it's going to be better than it is.
I know, it's the worst kind
I think
of mediocre or bad
the first
movie.
half to 2/3 I think are great, and then I just feel like, again, I said this in the other thing, Nolan, when faced with a choice between making art and being a commercial filmmaker, will follow the commercial impulses. And I think because he flirts with art, he has a lot of fans who think that he is making art film, and he's not. He's making ambitious popcorn movies that ultimately play it very safe and hew to what a mass audience wants to see.
I'm going to say this right now. I am a huge Christopher Nolan fan, and I know that's on the Christopher Nolan comment bingo. Oh, here's the part where the critic says they're a Christopher Nolan fan. I am. I even still love The Dark Knight Rises, and I know everyone else turned on that. I think they're great. But this is just almost great. There's like a couple of drafts of a screenplay away from being genuinely great, but it's just it's overly pushy with the emotions, and again, a lot of the action sequences, they throw a lot of science at you, but like, we have to spin at exactly the right turning rate of blah, and I'm like, aren't the odds of that even less plausible than finding a wormhole? Like, it's absolutely ludicrous how stupid.
But
the
that
concept,
scene,
but it's so thrilling.
That scene works, exactly.
Exactly, but it's so
It
thrilling.
is so
and
thrilling,
that's-
I didn't think about the math. You know?
Which is why it's frustrating, because it's almost great. It looks great. The acting is solid across the board.
Right.
The set design is amazing. The special effects are amazing. So many things about it are amazing, except the fundamental reason to make
Right.
it.
That's the thing. This movie that does not reward a lot of thinking. Right? If you
Which
go
is
in there
weird.
with
It
your
wants you to
emotions,
think.
if you go in with your emotions, like emotionally, I think this movie does a great job. But the more and where I'm calling it out here is this movie presents itself like it's very intelligent, and it isn't. All of the logic falls apart, and it's really
And
frustrating.
I feel like even emotionally it's a cheat because, again, you've got Jessica Chastain carrying this grudge around when she works for NASA and should totally know exactly why he does what he does.
I realize she's still going to be hurt because her dad abandoned her, but she doesn't get it.
Yeah.
It's not that she was like, I know why he went, but I'm still really, really hurt and I feel abandoned by my father. And I can't
No,
believe
she behaves as though it makes no sense to her whatsoever.
Exactly, and that's ludicrous. But even the final beat of the movie, which is an emotional beat, and this is the thing that rang really false to me, when he's saying goodbye to his daughter, and he's like, well, what do I do? Well, everyone I know is dead. What do I do? He's like, go to Brand. And I'm like, why? You have no emotional connection to her. You built up no relationship other than arguing about the fate of mankind. It's not like you fell in love with her and she's waiting for you on this distant planet. Him leaving, and by the way, like
They go way back.
They go. Here's the thing. He leaves the space station to go see Brand. The space station is already out by Saturn. They're gonna be there soon anyway. He's just getting there like a day early. It's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. It doesn't work.
Yeah, so this is a frustrating film, but again, I think that if people are gung-ho to see it as huge as you can, spend the extra money for the hugeness.
The spectacle.
The
is
spectacle,
so
the spectacle
great.
is unassailable. It's the one thing in this movie that I cannot
And here's the
nitpick
thing.
at all.
Everyone's going to love it now because they're going to be in denial. And in 6 months, come back and talk to us when you can admit that the movie's not that good.
I don't know about
When you
tonight.
get all Man of Steel on it.
Yeah,
I think-
exactly.
I
Oh
think-
no, it's a new Nolan movie. It's perfect. You guys suck.
This is why I don't trust cinema scores. They get like everyone's, the cinema score for the movie was blank. They asked people who went out to the movie
On
opening
opening
week,
night,
opening night, paid money, clearly looked forward to it, and asked them immediately after they leave the theater. There's a difference between a reaction, reaction. Oh, I thought it was cool. And then afterwards, you think about it, and then you remember it, and you realize, I don't remember that movie. It wasn't as cool as I thought, or
Again.
I thought about it. It falls apart.
Come talk to us in 6 months.
Time is the ultimate film critic. It's the only one that
There you
matters.
go.
What lasts, what doesn't.
So thanks.